Yeah, so again, we are still on Act 1, Scene 2. This is an important scene, it's a big scene. So, the conversation and the discussion between Cassius and Brutus is over, more or less over. Okay. Brutus says that you love me, I'm nothing jealous. Okay, I'm not suspicious of the fact that you love me, I trust you. What you would work me to, I have some aim. I know what you are trying to get out of me. I have an idea, I understood. How I have thought of this and of these times, I shall recount hereafter. My own opinion on all this that you have told me, I'll tell you. For this present, I would not. So with love, I might entreat you, be any further moved. So Brutus is, he says all these things. I trust you. I understand what you're saying. I'll definitely get back to you. But for the moment, I don't want to talk about this anymore. What you have said, I will consider. What you have to say, I will with patience hear and find a time both meet to hear and answer such high things. Okay. That high, that adjective high in high things, that gives you a clue that basically Brutus is positive, and he says, "I'll give you a time meet." Meet in Shakespeare's English means suitable. Pattiya samayam is meet time. Okay. Uh, Till then, my noble friend, chew upon this. Brutus had rather be a villager than to repute himself a son of Rome under these hard conditions as this time is like to lay upon us. And in this sentence, villager in those days, villain, villager, these were bad words. Okay. Because it was a very class segregated society, and like the Indian caste system, the lower your class, the less you were earning, the more you were working with your hands, the more contempt that people above you had for you. It was on a descending scale of contempt, if you put it in Dr. Ambedkar's language. Okay. Villains were basically, they were the serfs. Okay. People who used to work on the land and who were given a part of the harvest, whatever the harvest was, as a wage for their work. They had no freedom to leave the land or to do anything on their own. They had no land of their own which they could cultivate for themselves. And if there was a war, they could be forced to volunteer to fight for the war. Those were the conditions of the feudal system. And Brutus saying this is very odd, because Rome was not like this. Roman structure was simple. I told you there were slaves 70%, plebeians, another 20-25%, and patricians 5 to 10%, closer to 5. But then, this is after all Shakespearean English and a Shakespearean audience. So Brutus says that I would rather call myself a villager. Even I am ashamed of these times. Even I am ashamed of the fact that one man, this Caesar, he doesn't name Caesar, but he says that in these times, സമയം ശരിയല്ല എന്നുള്ളത് ഞാൻ സമ്മതിക്കുന്നു. ഈ സമയത്ത് ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ ഒരാൾ സ്വേച്ഛാധിപതിയായി വരാൻ പോകുന്നു. ഓക്കെ, അത് സബ് ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ആണ്, അത് പറയാത്ത വാക്കുകളാണ്, പക്ഷെ അതുണ്ട്. ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ ഒരു റോംവാസി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു റോമൻ നാഗരികൻ, ഒരു റോമൻ പൗരൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നതിൽ എനിക്കും വലിയ അഭിമാനമൊന്നുമില്ല. ഓക്കെ, ദാറ്റ്സ് ബേസിക്കലി ദ പോയിന്റ് ഹീസ് മേക്കിംഗ്. ആൻഡ് കാഷ്യസ് ഇസ് വെരി ഹാപ്പി. He says, "I am glad that my weak words have struck but thus much show of fire from Brutus." And then that conversation ends, because Caesar and his train means a long following of people, they come in. And, and then this thing, Cassius is telling Brutus, Brutus is not the first person with whom Cassius has talked. He has talked to other conspirators already. Because Brutus loves Caesar. He is a democrat, he is a noble person, but he loves Caesar. The others are more easily influenceable in taking part in a conspiracy to kill Caesar, because they are all ex-enemies. Brutus was an ex-rival, but they were not enemies in any sense, because Caesar loved him and Brutus also loved Caesar. There was a lot of respect. Okay. So that's how it works. So Brutus is probably the last one. And then Cassius tells Brutus, when you see Casca, just ask him to report the events of today, He has a unique way of explaining things. So just pluck him by the sleeve, call him, and he will tell you things in his own way. അയാളുടെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേക രീതിയുണ്ട്, ഒരു സ്റ്റൈലുണ്ട്, അതിൽ പറയും. Okay. And Brutus says, I will do so, but look you, Cassius, the angry spot that glow on Caesar's brow, and all the rest look like a chidden train. Okay. So this is very worrying. The procession is coming in, and Caesar is looking angry, and all the others, they look like a chidden train. That is, chidden means people who have been scolded. Okay, chiding is scolding. Chiding. And they have all been chidden. They have all been scolded, and they look very sad, like little children when they are scolded. They sulk, they look depressed. It's a painful thing. And Calpurnia's cheek is pale, and Cicero looks with such ferret and such fiery eyes, as we have seen him in the Capitol being tossed in conference by some senators. Cicero looks as if he has been having a serious argument. His eyes are red with anger. So obviously something is wrong. And Cassius says, Casca will tell us what the matter is. Okay. Then we see a typical, an emerging dictator kind of Caesar. Antonius, Caesar, let me have men about me that are fat, sleek-headed men and such as sleep o' nights. Yon Cassius hath a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Okay, so Caesar recognizes Cassius as a person who is potentially dangerous. Antony, fear him not, Caesar. He is not dangerous. He is a noble Roman and well given. Would he were fatter, but I fear him not. Yet if my name were liable to fear, Caesar is very arrogant here. He says that if I were capable of fear, Caesar എന്ന് പറയുന്ന എനിക്ക് ഈ ഭയം എന്നുള്ള ഒരു സംഭവം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ, I do not know the man I should avoid so soon as that spare Cassius. Spare is somebody who is on a bare minimum, and in this case he is referring to the body of Cassius. Cassius is he has a spare physique. Okay, very slim. Okay, that kind of thing. He reads much. He is a great observer, and he looks quite through the deeds of men. And why does Caesar fear him? Because Cassius reads, he watches people very carefully, he understands them. He loves no play as thou dost, Antony. And Cassius is not interested in entertainment. He hears no music. Seldom he smiles, and smiles in such a sort as if he mocked himself and scorned his spirit that could be moved to smile at anything. ഒരു ചിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു സ്വഭാവമില്ല. Cassius is a person who doesn't smile, and even when he smiles, it's as if he is smiling at himself, making fun of himself and smiling. That kind of thing, as if he is surprised that he is smiling at all. Such men as he be never at heart seized whilst they behold a greater than themselves. Okay, these people like Cassius, who don't smile, who don't enjoy life in any way, who think a lot, who read a lot, who observe and understand people too much, they are always uneasy when they see somebody who is greater than them. Okay, and Caesar is referring to himself. And therefore are they very dangerous. I rather tell thee what is to be feared than what I fear, for always I am Caesar. ഇതൊക്കെ എനിക്ക് പേടിയായത് കൊണ്ടല്ല, കാരണം പേടി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് എനിക്ക് അറിയാത്തൊരു സംഭവമാണ്, എൻ്റെ ഡിക്ഷണറിയിലില്ല എന്നൊക്കെ പറയില്ലേ. ഓക്കെ, but I'm telling you, just so that you can be careful, that people like this should be feared. Come on my right hand, for this ear is deaf, and tell me truly what thou thinkst of him. So he's inviting Antony. He says, okay, and there are people around, and he can't talk openly against Cassius. So he's telling Antony, you come to my right hand side, my left ear is a little deaf, and you tell me. And they all go, and then Casca and Brutus are on stage. Casca says, you pulled me, you want to speak to me. And then Brutus asks Casca about what happened that day, and Casca says why there was a crown offered him, and being offered him, he put it by with the back of his hand thus, and then the people fell a shouting. Okay, So Casca is narrating events, and basically, Casca does it in a very unique, funny, cynical kind of style. But basically, what he says is that Caesar was offered a crown, and he refused the crown. But no, he did not refuse very strongly, like very reluctantly, he refused it. And the people started shouting because they wanted him to be king, and he was refusing it. Then he was offered again, and he refused it. But second time he was even more reluctant. അത് വേണമെന്ന് ആഗ്രഹമുണ്ടായിരുന്നു, പക്ഷേ ഇത് അങ്ങനെ വേണമെന്ന് കാണിച്ചാൽ ശരിയാവില്ലല്ലോ. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെ ആ ഒരു സ്പിരിറ്റോടാണ് വേണ്ടാന്ന് വെച്ചത്. And the third time it was offered, and again, he refused it. He was very reluctant. He didn't want to refuse, but he refused. And the people were shouting, and as if he had done a great thing, and like they wanted him to be king, and so on. And then Brutus says, tell us the manner of it, gentle Casca. And Casca, he says that it was all ഒരു കോമാളിത്തരമാണ് ഈ ജനങ്ങൾ കാണിക്കുന്നത്. Like all patricians, like we saw Flavius and Marollus in the first scene, Casca is also very contemptuous of these ordinary people. Oh, ഇവന്മാർക്ക് എവിടെ വിവരം, അതിൻ്റെ അടുത്തിൽ കൂടി പോയിട്ടില്ല. They don't have any sense. They hero worship people blindly, and they make a big scene of it. They offering him crown, and he refuses it, and all that. And they shout, they clap their chopped hands, they hooted. And chopped hands are a reference to working class hands. If you work a lot with your hands become calloused. They become somewhat hard and somewhat rough. The skin becomes rough compared to the hands of people who don't work much with their hands. Okay. And they clapped, and they threw their nightcaps, and their breath is bad. പൊതുവെ ശാരീരികമായിട്ട് പോലും ഒരു പുച്ഛമാണ് ഈ സാധാരണ തൊഴിലാളി വർഗ ആൾക്കാരോട്. ഹീസ് contemptuous of working class people, even to the extent of being physically repelled by them. And they are sweaty people, dirty people, their breath doesn't smell fresh, and they clap their chopped hands. What kind of people? And of course they have no sense. They want to make somebody a king, and when he refuses, and he is refusing very reluctantly, but they are not able to see it, and they think it's a big deal. That kind of thing. And he also says, like they are so, they made so much noise, and so much bad breath was coming out of them, that I did not open my lips, because if I open my mouth, the breath will go inside me and I'll faint. For mine own part, I durst not laugh for fear of opening my lips and receiving the bad air. Okay. Then Cassius says, but soft I pray you, what did Caesar swoon? Did Caesar faint when all this happened? Okay. So according to Casca, what happens after all this nakra, this tamasha, that Caesar is offered the crown, and then he faints. Caesar faints. And Brutus, he loves Caesar, he knows Caesar, so he says that Caesar has the falling sickness. That is, Caesar is an epileptic. He has these fits and occasionally faints and so on. And Cassius immediately twists those words, and he says, no, Caesar hath it not, but you and I and honest Casca, we have the falling sickness. We are the people who are falling now. Caesar is standing tall over all of us. And Casca says, I don't know all that, but Caesar fell down, and then people were shouting as if some big entertainment, some theater was going on. And then Brutus says, what did he say when he came back to consciousness? And it seems Caesar offered his throat to people to cut, and very melodramatic. Okay. And people started crying, and they were very moved by him. So somewhere, according to Casca at least, Caesar is a kind of performer. He knows how to play to the gallery, and there are people to swallow it also. And then Cassius says, did Cicero say anything? Cicero is the other man, the famous rhetorician, the famous orator, who they are trying to include in this plan. And Casca says he spoke Greek, so none of us understood him. But some people who understood what he was saying, they looked at themselves and smiled. So, something like and Flavius and Morales, the senators whom we saw in the first scene, they have been put to silence. There's disagreement over Shakespeare scholars, what this means. Were they killed or were they removed from the Senate or what exactly happened, we don't know. But somewhere they were suppressed. In some way, they were punished for pulling scarves and other things which were used to decorate the statues of Caesar. Okay. And then Cassius invites Casca for dinner, and Casca says, tonight I can't come, but tomorrow, yes, we can dine. And then Casca goes away, and Brutus says that he has grown to be a blunt fellow. ഇപ്പോൾ കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ പച്ചയ്ക്ക് പറയും, ഉള്ളത് ഉള്ളത് പോലെ പറയുന്ന കൂട്ടത്താണ്. And Cassius says, not just blunt, he is a bold person. He is good for anything, any enterprise, any plan of anything worthy, any worthy action. He is always available. And blunt is his way of speaking. Or samsara shailiyana. We find it a little rude and crude, but then in a way that suits, it allows us to digest his character. We understand his character. So we just take it like this. And then Brutus and Cassius agree to meet at Brutus's house the next day, and Brutus goes away. And then we see this famous soliloquy. A soliloquy is a speech made by a character revealing his or her own feelings to the audience, not to anybody else. And it is made when the character is alone. Okay. An aside is the same thing, but with the important difference that when an aside is spoken, the other characters are still on the stage. The character who speaks the aside is not alone. And on Shakespeare's stage, the players, the actors, when they used to make an aside, they used to come to the edge of the stage and cup their palm around their mouth, to make a gesture that they are talking to the audience alone and do that. Whereas the soliloquy can be spoken on the stage, okay, because there is nobody around, nothing to fear. So he says, well, Brutus, thou art noble, yet I see thy honorable metal may be wrought. From that it is disposed. Therefore it is meet that noble minds keep ever with their likes. For who so firm that cannot be seduced? Caesar doth bear me hard, but he loves Brutus. So here, Cassius is revealing the fact that he is using Brutus because Brutus is noble, and Caesar does not like Cassius. We have seen that, and Cassius also knows that very well. But he loves Brutus, and that is why Brutus is a useful person to have. The first reason, of course, is his reputation for nobility, his famous stoicism. The second reason is that Caesar loves Brutus. If Brutus is in the front, Caesar loves Brutus. That's one reason. And then if I were Brutus now and he were Cassius, he would not humor me. And but then, Cassius is very clever, very shrewd. And Cassius has been very persuasive. And he says, but what I have done till now, I'm just one person. I have spoken to Brutus. And Brutus seems to have believed me. It's okay. But then, if I were in Brutus's place and Brutus were in my place and he spoke to me like this, I wouldn't believe him and I wouldn't join the show so easily. So we need to make sure that somebody is with us, particularly in a dangerous plan like this. So what I'm going to do is, like tonight, I'm going to throw in a lot of letters through his window into his house. And they will be in different handwritings, as if they have been written by different people. And all of them will be begging Brutus to do something about this terrible condition in Rome, where one man is about to become the dictator and all powerful, and Roman democracy, of course, patrician democracy, 5% or less than 5% democracy, but still, whatever it was, it is in danger. I'm going to get a lot of people to write letters in different handwritings. Cassius will write them all by himself. And I'm going to, that will persuade Brutus, because then, Brutus has this thing, he is noble, and He has a reputation for being noble, of being a people's leader, okay, Jananayak and whatever you call it, and he likes that image. And if that image is reinforced even in something like this, Brutus is likely to be more persuaded, and Cassius knows that, and that is what Cassius is planning to do. Okay, and yeah, so that is the end of the scene, and he says, yeah, so that is it, So uh, Caesar's ambition shall be glanced at, and after this, let Caesar seat him sure, for we will shake him, or worse days endure. The closing couplet shows the resolution, the determination of Cassius. Okay, either we are going to shake Caesar or we are going to suffer even more. There is no third way out. Okay, no compromise. So this is the end of Act 1, Scene 2. Okay, cool. So we come to the next one, Act 1, Scene 3. And here we see, there are three conspirators, Cicero, Casca, and Cassius, of course. They are getting together, and they are, strengthening each other's resolve to take part in the conspiracy. And there are a lot of things happening. There are these omens. I don't know about the Romans, but Elizabethans, they believed that whenever something unnatural happened, the unnatural thing could be in a family, like in Macbeth. Lady Macbeth starts leading her husband, and a woman is a natural inferior of man according to those days. And she had to, so if a woman starts ruling, then there is disorder that is reflected in the nature around us, in society, and in the cosmos itself, in the entire universe, and unnatural things start happening. And this is basically an Elizabethan belief, if something happens which disturbs the existing social order, okay. And those days, it was not like these days, it was not, people were not, even if they thought that the social order is socially constructed by human beings, they didn't express it. And many people believed that it was a natural given order, not constructed. Okay. Not everybody, because, as far back as 1371, during the peasant revolt, you had the peasants. They had this little slogan kind of thing, when Adam ruled and Eve span, who was then the gentleman? There were no gentlemen. That is, there were no superior people, inferior people those days. So somewhere, working class human beings, at least a few of them, have always suspected and known that this social order is not naturally constructed. But then the hegemonic idea, the idea that ruled over most people, was the fact that this is the natural order of things. This is how it is meant to be. So if you upset one thing, whether inside the family or inside the empire, inside the city or wherever, the forces of nature would reflect it. The universe itself would reflect it. Okay. Not a very logical or scientific argument, but it was very widespread. And in certain disguises, it has come back even today. People believe these things, this pandemic, many people are saying that it's nature's way of making us pay for what we have done. And, there is some scientific truth that zoonotic diseases come from certain human interventions in nature, which are excessive. But then we don't know. There is no conclusive proof to link the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, with this. But anyway, getting back to Shakespeare, there is thunder, there is lightning, and Casca, in the earlier scene, Casca was a very cynical person. In this scene, he's trembling. He's really scared because he sees all these things, Casca says, I have seen tempests, I have seen scolding winds, winds making a lot of noise. Then the ocean raging, threatening clouds, all that. And then, he says, but on that particular day, that the day when they are speaking, when the scene takes place, there was a tempest, there was a storm which was dropping fire. Okay. And Casca says this is a sign that there is a civil war going on. The gods are fighting among themselves. Okay. Remember that with the ancient Greeks or Romans or Aryans also, or the Nordic people, it was many gods, not one god. So there seems to be some kind of civil war in heaven, or the gods are angry with us for the kind of things we are doing on earth. Okay. And then Casca says, there's a common slave, he held up his hand, and the hand was burning like 20 torches being lit together. Okay, and but then the hand didn't burn. It was flaming but not burning. And then, when Casca went to the capital, there was a lion roaming about. What is the lion doing in the middle of the city? And the lion did not attack Casca or do anything. It just looked at him and then went away, somewhat angry looking lion. Okay. And then there was a heap of women, ghastly women lying in a heap. They were in fear, in terrible fear. And when they said they were all afraid and shocked and stunned and lying like that in a heap, because they saw men walking up and down the streets with fire around them, not burning but flaming again. And then there was an owl in the marketplace in the afternoon, at noon, hooting and shrieking. Owl is a night bird. It's not meant to be anywhere out during the noon. Okay. And then, Casca says when all these things are happening at the same time, that obviously shows that something is very severely going wrong on the earth. And the center of the earth, of course, is Rome. I talked about that yesterday. And the gods are angry. We are messing with things so much that punishment is coming. Pani varindandavaracho. Okay. Okay, all these things have been happening, this thing, a storm with fire dropping from the skies, an owl in the afternoon, and dark clouds, and the ocean, roaring and rising, and, a heap of more than 100 women, scared out of their wits, and they swear that they saw men in fire and a slave whose hand was flaming like 20 torches but not burning. And so all these things, they show that there is something going very wrong in the what is known as the body politic. Okay, body and politics minus the s at the end. Something is going wrong in the body politic of Rome, and that is being reflected in the cosmos or the universe or the order of natural things. Okay. And you know and then uh, they are talking about all this. Cicero goes away, and then Cassius comes in, and Casca and Cassius start talking. Okay. And Casca is still very scared. What is happening? And Ammachi എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് കാണുന്നത്? Oh my God. And Cassius says that these are all very good signs. Like they are all proving me right. I take them in the right spirit. ഇങ്ങനെ തന്നെ വേണം. Okay, that kind of thing. And Casca says why, and then Cassius says, don't you understand? You are dull, Casca. ഒരു റോമന് വേണ്ട ഒരു മിടുക്കില്ലല്ലോ. You are dull, and why are all these things happening? And he goes into details. Okay. And and then he hints at the fact that it's because there is this Caesar who is no bigger, no greater, no stronger, no mightier, no more intelligent than any of us. And he has become so much greater and so much more powerful. And he is going to be the sole authority in Rome now. And, he says, we remember that Rome has had a tradition of patrician democracy, and our ancestors were like us physically. Mentally, physically we have taken after our ancestors. We have the same body proportions and limbs and all that, but mentally, we are no longer the children of our fathers. Pachaki Parna, and Cassius is saying it harshly. In Malayalam, of course, it sounds much harsher. Cassius is saying it harshly, so I can put it in harsh Malayalam. നമ്മളൊരു തന്തയില്ലാത്ത വർഗമായി മാറിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇന്നത്തെ റോമൻസിൻ്റെ കാര്യം അതാണ്. That's the problem. We have become like we are being ruled by our mother's spirits. Okay. Our father's spirits are no longer there. We have our father's bodies. We may have muscles and beard and all those men's things, but our mother's spirits are ruling us, and that is the problem, and that is being reflected by the heavens and by the forces of nature. Okay. And then, Casca says, I heard that they are planning to, the other senators are planning to make Caesar the king. And Cassius says, if that happens, I'm going to commit suicide because I can't live like that. I can't live under a king. And I may not have the power to do anything else. I may not have the power to kill Caesar. But then I have the power to at least cancel out my own life, and I will use it because I can't live like a slave under a king. And then, Casca says, yes, even I would do that. If Caesar becomes the king, I would also commit suicide. And then, Cassius says, but do we need to do that? Okay, there are so many of us. Do we need to commit suicide because of this one man? Can't we work on some other solution? Okay. And he says that, Caesar is not such a tyrant. He has become a tyrant because we have become useless. He has become a wolf because we have become like sheep. He has become a shiny metal because we have become like straws. We have become like offal, like rubbish, like straws. Okay. So that is the problem, that a very ordinary, even mediocre person, in front of him we are bowing down. That shows that we are rubbish, we are waste, and that is the reason why he has become so much, grown so big. And Casca is convinced, okay, and they join and they agree to meet in Pompey's porch to work out the entire plan. And then Cinna comes in. Cinna is another person who joins the conspirators, also an ex-enemy of Caesar. And he too wins that. And then, Cinna says, I wish we could get Brutus on our side because, all of them recognize that. And they, of course, Cassius already knows it and he has already worked on Brutus. And they also know that, if we get Brutus, because they don't have credibility, അവർക്ക് ആ വിശ്വസ്തത ഇല്ല, നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. കാരണം അവരെല്ലാവരും സീസറിന്റെ ശത്രുക്കളായിരുന്നു. They were Caesar's enemies. So if they do anything, everybody is going to think, ശത്രുത തീർക്കുകയാണ്. But if Brutus comes into the whole thing, the first thing is that Brutus and Caesar love each other. Brutus was also a rival, but they did not become enemies. And Brutus is known to be noble and selfless. So then the whole thing will not look like a conspiracy. It will look like a noble effort to maintain the freedom and dignity of Rome. The entire plan of murdering this man in the Senate will be whitewashed suitably. Okay. So that is the way they are planning to pitch it. And they agree, and he says that Cassius says that 3/4 is on our side. Okay. And in the next encounter we will get the remaining 1/4. അയാളെ ഷുവർ ആക്കും, ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഭാഗത്താക്കും. Don't worry, I have already done my work on that. And 3/4 he is already with us. In the next encounter it will be the last 1/4, and then we are sure we'll all be together. And Casca says yes, because everybody respects him, and his countenance is like alchemy. Alchemy was the parent of the science of chemistry. It was the effort which was made over hundreds of years by people to change other substances into gold. It did not succeed, but then alchemy has become a metaphor in the language now for any effort to clean up something, to make something which is not very good or which may even be bad to look very good, to look very precious. So that is the advantage of getting Brutus with us.